Most people think change happens when motivation appears, but that's not really how the mind works. Have you ever noticed how some people read hundreds of books, watch endless videos, make detailed plans, and still stay exactly the same? Meanwhile, someone else experiences one small realization, and their entire life quietly begins to shift. Why? Because transformation doesn't begin with information. It begins with identity. Your brain is constantly trying to protect the version of you it already knows, even if that version is stressed, even if it's unhappy, even if it's exhausted. Familiar feels safe to the mind, and anything unfamiliar, even positive change, can feel like a threat. That's why real change often feels uncomfortable at first, not because you're failing, but because your brain is trying to pull you back toward what feels emotionally familiar. In psychology, this is connected to something called self-schema. A self-schema is the internal story your brain believes about who you are. I'm bad at discipline. I'm an anxious person. I never finish what I start. These don't feel like thoughts anymore. They start feeling like facts. And once the brain accepts an identity, it begins filtering reality through it. You stop noticing evidence that contradicts the story. You unconsciously protect the version of yourself you've repeated the longest. This is why motivation fades so quickly. Because motivation tries to force behavior, while identity silently controls it underneath. You can wake up inspired, make a perfect plan, promise yourself this time will be different. But if your deeper identity still says, I'm inconsistent, your brain will eventually return to that pattern. Not because you lack willpower, because the mind always tries to stay internally consistent. This changes the way we should think about self-improvement. Most people focus only on outcomes, lose the weight, wake up early, read more books, be more productive. But lasting change doesn't happen when you force better actions. It happens when you slowly become someone for whom those actions feel natural. A person who believes they are trying to meditate will constantly battle resistance. But a person who quietly begins seeing themselves as someone who protects their peace no longer needs as much discipline. The behavior starts matching the identity. That's the real shift. Neuroscience shows that the brain strengthens whatever identity is repeated most consistently. Not the loudest thought, not the strongest emotion, the most repeated one. Every small action becomes evidence. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, your brain updates the story slightly. Each time you abandon yourself, it updates again. Over time, your identity becomes less like a decision and more like a memory. This is why tiny habits matter more than dramatic life resets. The brain trusts repetition more than intensity. A single perfect day changes very little. But repeated small signals, read one page, go for one walk, sit quietly for 5 minutes, slowly teach the nervous system. This is who we are now. And maybe that's the part nobody talks about enough. Becoming a new person is usually quiet. It's not always a dramatic breakthrough. Sometimes it's just choosing again and again not to return to the version of yourself that no longer fits. The people who truly change their lives aren't always more motivated than everyone else. They simply stop reinforcing the old identity, and eventually, the mind stops fighting the new one. So the next time you feel frustrated with yourself, don't ask, why can't I stay motivated? ask something deeper. What version of myself am I rehearsing every day? Because in the end, your life is rarely shaped by one big decision. It's shaped by the identity your mind practices in silence.